Welcome to the Life of a Social Media Manager, a show powered by Socialinsider. I am Maria, marketing expert, and every month I gather top social media experts to discover how to build a successful career as a social media manager with all the struggles of running online communities. Follow me and discover the good, the bad, and the ugly from the life of a social media manager. My guest for today is Dominic Edmundson. Dominic currently works as a Senior Content and Channels Officer at Brunel University, London. Social media has been at the core of Dominic's professional career, where he has worked in a number of digital marketing roles across higher education, in addition to the travel sector. Dominic is looking forward to sharing his story about how he got into social media and provide some advice into how to make a success out of it. Dominic, thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the next sort of 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, also I'm looking forward to learn more about social media. So please, let's start with the beginning and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with sort of social media and how I've sort of got into it, I think my first sort of role into it was when I worked at Crystal Ski Holidays in Austria. For sort of 6 months as part of a winter ski season. So yeah, that was just looking after the resort account and predominantly on Twitter and Instagram in those days. And then I think it's kind of worked out as it's always been an interest of mine. And then I think in terms of like professional sort of career, I think it really sort of stepped up when I was on a university leadership graduate program called Ambitious Futures. So I think that allowed me to focus on my interests in social media and, realize that there was a clear path for me within this industry. And I think that's, helped me into my current role as a senior content and channels officer here at Brunel University London, where I use social media daily. And, I think it's just allowed me to sort of understand, what my skill sets are. And, it's definitely, a massive interest for me. And, I can only sort of thank sort of previous experiences to guide me to where I am today.
Great. So now you are working in social media. And for the last, 2 years, I've talked to a lot of social media managers. Working in social media means wearing a lot of hats. What does your day-to-day schedule look like?
Yeah, it definitely does have a lot of different hats. And I think that really depends on, whatever company or team you work in, and everyone will say something different. I think for my day to day, it obviously completely varies, which is something I really love. I think for me, because in my role, actually, I do a bit of web development as well. So it's not just social media. So that's quite nice to have that variety. But I think in terms of like the social media aspect, I could be sort of managing social media, community building, creating content with digital ambassadors. So going around campus, shooting things for TikTok or Instagram Reels or even YouTube, longer form videos. And then obviously reporting as well, ensuring that, the data that we collate is what feeds into our plans as well. So yeah, I think for me, I personally just love the content creation side of things and working with the students. It's always nice to kind of bounce ideas off each other, and I think that's definitely the one thing I really enjoy about working within a university and working in social media as well.
Great. So you said you started working at Crystal Sky Holidays in Austria.
Mm-hmm.
How did your passion for social media start? When was the moment that you realized, okay, so this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I think for me, as I sort of touched upon, social media has always been an interest of mine. I think even, back in the day, when I was younger and, Facebook had come into existence, and even Bebo, if anyone can remember that. I mean, I know that had a bit of a moment, didn't it? And yeah, but that was quite interesting. But I think from personal point of view, I just enjoy the feeling of, feeling connected to others and community building. And I think you sort of mentioned, with Crystal Ski Holidays, it was only sort of a minor aspect of my role, the social media aspect of it, something I really enjoyed. But I think it was more when I was working at SOAS in on my university graduate program. I think that was when I sort of started to realize that there were obviously elements of digital marketing that I really enjoyed, social media being the main one. And I think in terms of other sort of previous employment, it was always something that I wanted to take part in, whether it was setting up an Instagram page or getting on Twitter, and really kind of building that experience from there. So it was never it was never really designated social media roles. It was just roles that I really enjoyed having that social media element to it. And I think, in my current role, that's now allowed me to really work on social media. And I think for me, it's just provided more focus and direction in my professional life. And I think that's really, really important sort of going forwards.
Yeah, also what I like about social media is that, as you said, it helps create communities. And I think it's great because through social media, we can meet and we can discover a lot of people, and we can talk and we can share insights. And I think this is actually great.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there thinking, okay, so maybe I want to work in social media, but I don't know where to start. What skills do you need to develop to become a social media manager from your point of view?
Yeah, I've listened to some really great answers on this podcast, actually. And I think it's trying to sort of condense sort of ideas around. I think for me, the first one I would always say is be proactive. As I sort of mentioned previously, is I was working in different elements of higher education, and even at Crystal Ski Holidays, is that, it was always an interest of mine. So I wanted to be on social media, even though that was not actually my job title or my main responsibility. It was sort of a secondary, shall we say. So I think, being proactive, trying to seek out opportunities. And I think, these days, employers are obviously aware of social media. And I think if you want to get involved in it, then, there's always an element to sort of support businesses and that. But I think even from a personal point of view as well, you don't even need to do it in professional life. I think, one example, even creating videos on TikTok about a niche that you're interested in, or even on LinkedIn, personal branding is so important these days. So you don't actually need to do it in your current role. But I think being proactive and, being brave to kind of just create the content is important in that. I think step number 2, I would say, be patient, because that kind of follows on with the being proactive. If you're starting from scratch, and, the results might not come instantly, or they won't come instantly. But, it's being patient. And if it's, something that you're really interested in, and, you've got that passion for it, then it will eventually, come through, and, you'll be able to make a success of it. And I think the third one kind of ties in both nicely is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think for me, I always used to think myself as a perfectionist. But I think working in social media and working in marketing, you certainly lose that tag, because you kind of have to be bold and you have to make mistakes to be able to learn from, learn from mistakes. And, that's how you become successful, is, trialing and error. And I think those are, 3 key skills, which I think are really important in becoming a successful social media manager these days.
Great. So be proactive, be patient, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yes.
I like that you said don't be afraid to make mistakes, because I think there are many people out there who postpone doing different things because they are afraid of what others might think. So I have this content, I have this picture, but I don't want to post it because maybe someone would say, oh, this is not appropriate, or this is not. I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn where people were commenting saying that this is not for LinkedIn, you should post this on Instagram or you should post this on Facebook.
Yeah. It's social media. So, I think, it's your platform. If you want to post it on your LinkedIn, you want to post it on TikTok, that's up to you. It shouldn't be dictated by what others or the conventions of how that platform should be. So, yeah, I think just if you've got an idea and it showcases your sort of passions and interests, then I would 100% say go for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. Now, let's talk about strategy. What do you think are the key elements for creating a good to great strategy on social media?
Yeah, I think before you even start, you need to plan. I think that's the most important thing. Without planning, where are you sort of leading your strategy to? So I think, you've got to understand who your audience is and, where they are, basically. So that all sort of falls under the planning aspect as well. But I think you also need to be able to benchmark what success looks like. So whether that's sort of engagement, brand awareness, whether you're working sort of in sort of paid social and you want to sort of have conversion. So it really, all boils down to, the planning aspect as well. But I think, I can say for the whole sort of time, plan. But equally, you need to be able to optimize as you go along and be flexible because you never know what's going to come your way. So it's kind of like having a plan, but equally, having a plan B and a plan C, when it comes to social media, because you don't know what sort of trends are coming up, but you've got to, have that in place or have the resources in place to be able to, ensure that, you can make the most of your strategy and, achieve the goals that you've set out to.
Great. So 10 years ago, Facebook was the number one platform. Then was Instagram, people were posting on Twitter. Now everyone is talking about TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe social media today? Because I think as a social media manager, things change so quickly and so fast. I don't know. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I know. And I think I've heard a lot of analogies being related to the Wild West. And I can't disagree with that. I think it can be like that. And I certainly wouldn't disagree with that. But I think there are a lot of positives to it. And I think, I would like to sort of highlight the positives because I think it is a great place to be. And it certainly helps me sort of pay my bills. So I'm not gonna slate it. But I think, one analogy I actually thought of, and I might upset a few people from New York about this, but I thought it's like being in Times Square in New York. I think, if you've never been to Times Square, you think, okay, it looks awesome. There's fantastic visuals. It's a place you have to go to, which I think some businesses and some brands think, okay, we've got to be on social media. We've got to be on TikTok. However, if you don't have a plan, once you get there, you're sort of thinking, okay, Times Square is like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. There's so many people. I'm just a number here. Like, where's my voice? And I don't really understand what the hype is because I don't know what I'm doing here. And I think like that can easily translate to, as people, businesses or brands on social media, because if you don't have a plan, then you're not going to get the most out of it. So I just thought that was, quite a good analogy. I'm quite happy to be corrected, but I'm going to stick with social media is the Times Square, and yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Well, actually, I love this answer. I think you're the first one telling me that. So I've seen a lot this question on Facebook groups. Should we go only organic or should we do also paid? What's your take on this? What should we do?
Yeah, and I think I'm a bit biased in this, if I'm honest, and I would say organic. I think personally that's my background. That's always been something that I've enjoyed the most. And I think, as I touched upon earlier, it's one of the key aspects of social media I really enjoy is the community building. And, you can do that really well with organic. And I think, I love being able to create authentic content. And I think with organic, you can do that quite easily. However, saying that, I think paid social, there is definitely a place for it. And I think, if you're trying to, increase sales or conversion, then, I'm definitely think, all for that. And it can have those quick wins, but I do think you can't rely on paid social, without a strong sort of organic following. So it works hand in hand, but, I'm going to say organic over paid for me.
Great. Yeah, I think you don't need the budget to create a strategy or to, to be number one or to be on top. So I think this is really important. People should understand that they don't need to do paid. You can start with organic, and then if you want to try, okay, you can try paid, but you just have to start at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you think people share posts from brands on social media? Because what's the key element that they have?
Yeah, I think, as I sort of said in the previous question about why I enjoy organic social, it's the authenticity and building communities. And I think people share brands on social because of that. They're authentic. There's humor involved as well, which I think is an important thing. And I think just showing their human side to brands as well, which means that they're relatable to people. I think if you've got a large multinational organization who is based in America, and they can reach someone in the north of England, I mean, that's two very different worlds. And I think that means that they're doing something right. So I think it's just showing that human side, being authentic. I think humor is probably one of the biggest things. And can't be underrated in terms of its importance to sharing posts on social media.
Yeah, actually, last week I was talking to someone, also a social media manager, and she told me that from her point of view, the perfect combination is between posts that are human and that entertain people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is kind of the success that brands are looking.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few more questions for you. What do you think are the key elements to create social media engagement these days? Because as a social media manager, you start the day with your boss coming to you and said, okay, so I want engagement and I want this, I want our social media channels to be number one. What can you do?
Yeah, and I think you said it previously, is that it's about keeping it simple in terms of entertaining, and inspiring and educating. I think those three pillars are definitely something that I try and think about whenever I'm creating content, stuff that I pass on to our digital ambassadors who I work with at Brunel is don't overcomplicate it. Try and think, is this content educational? Is it inspirational? And is it entertaining? Doesn't necessarily need to be all three. I think that's quite difficult for it to be all three. But if it's, one or two of those points, then I think, that's definitely, something to kind of focus on. And it's a good pillar to sort of build from. And yeah, I think that's definitely all you sort of need, to try and create good social media engagement. I think it's also vital to have a sort of a test and fail mindset. Is that some days, you might find content that, ticks all three of those boxes of educational, inspirational, and entertaining, and it absolutely flops. And you don't know why, because you think this is exactly what it should do. But then, other times when you think of something that sort of off the cuff. You don't really plan it that much. It actually ends up doing so much better. And I'm sure anyone who's sort of been involved in social media can relate and scratches their head at times and thinks, oh my God, what have I done wrong? How is this even possible? And sometimes that is just the way that social media works, is, you know, sometimes your least planned and kind of off the cuff piece of content can actually be your best and perform well. So yeah, and I think, you know, finally with that point, it's, you know, just ensuring you've got data to back up your results. So I think going forwards, if something you know, performs well, then, you know, you've got the data to showcase to sort of management that this is the route you want to take. Alternatively, you know, if there's something that your managers are trying to push and it's not performing well, then, you know, you've got data to kind of say, actually, this isn't performing well. I don't think we should continue with this. So, you know, it can be a good friend, data, even though it's not my biggest fan, but it is certainly it's a necessity for, you know, for success in social media.
Yeah, I think it's important because you may spend, I don't know, hours creating a piece of content that doesn't bring you so much engagement, and you can take a picture with your phone and post it, and you can boom.
Absolutely. It can be frustrating.
Yeah, sometimes. Who do you think should be my next guest on this podcast? If you could invite someone.
I think someone who really stands out to me on social media is Kevin Graham, particularly on LinkedIn. Definitely go follow him. He works on socials for Manscaped, I think male grooming brand, and I think he's just started his community, you know, from scratch. I think earlier this year, and yeah, post some, you know, funny photos, but also some really insightful tips to people working in social media. And I think he's just sort of been able to grow that community. And I'd love to be able to, you know, hear what he's got to say and, you know, find out a bit more about how he's sort of how his career's gone, because I think he was someone who had sort of become unemployed during the pandemic, and, you know, I think it's quite interesting to sort of see those or hear those stories of, you know, when you might have sort of reached rock bottom and have no direction on where to go, and, you know, he's sort of, you know, on upward trajectory, and now obviously looks like he's a, you know, a key sort of person within the field, and, you know, I think it'd be quite cool to see what he has to say.
Great. I'm going to follow him after we end up this talk. And my last question for you is, where can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Make sure you spell my surname correctly. I always get the second D missing. So that's Dominic Edmundson. And I'm also on Twitter as well. That's Edmundson with 4 N's. But I must warn you, I do only tweet a lot about football. So if you're interested in Premier League, German Bundesliga, that's where to find me. But yeah, LinkedIn is the main platform for me. So yeah, look forward to receiving some of your connections.
Great. Dominic, thank you so much for this talk. Actually, I took some notes while you were talking, and it was really, really great. And thank you for your time.
That's right. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.